She's stealing from me! Marcus Sterling slammed his fist on the marble countertop. His security chief flinched. On the phone screen, the footage played again. Dorothy, the woman who raised him, walking out of his building at 11 p.m. carrying 2 heavy bags she didn't bring in that morning. 3 weeks, Thomas. 3 weeks she's been doing this, and you're telling me you have no idea what's in those bags. Sir, we've checked the inventory. Nothing is missing. Then what the hell is she taking? Thomas had no answer. Marcus grabbed his coat. I'll find out myself. Tonight he would follow her. Tonight he would catch her red-handed. But what Marcus Sterling discovered would shatter everything he thought he knew about loyalty, about love, and about the monster he had become. Before we continue, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you what happened next. Marcus Sterling was 36 years old and owned half of Boston. His name was carved into 17 skyscrapers. His signature closed billion-dollar deals. Forbes put him on their cover twice before he turned 35. The Wall Street Journal called him the most ruthless developer of his generation. He wore that title like a badge of honor. But tonight, Marcus Sterling sat in his Tesla like a common criminal engine, off lights off, watching the service entrance of his own building, waiting for a 68-year-old woman to betray him. His phone rang. Vanessa Chen, his business partner of 12 years. Marcus, the Hong Kong investors are on the line. $400 million. Where the hell are you? Cancel it. Excuse me. I said cancel it, Vanessa. Tell them I'm sick. Tell them I died. I don't care. Have you completely lost your mind? We've been working on this deal for 8 months. 8 months, Marcus. I flew to Hong Kong 3 times. I missed my daughter's birthday for this deal. Something came up. Something more important than $400 million. Marcus watched the service door. His jaw was so tight it hurt. Yes. What could possibly be more important than... He hung up. The clock on his dashboard read 10:47 p.m. 13 more minutes. That's when Dorothy always left. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Monday. Same time, same bags, same guilty behavior. Marcus leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. His mind drifted to 30 years ago. He was 6 years old, standing at his mother's casket. The church was full of people he didn't know. His father sat in the front row drunk, already staring at nothing. Everyone kept saying they were sorry. Everyone kept patting his head. Everyone kept walking away. Except Dorothy. She knelt down beside him, her brown eyes soft and warm. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't pat his head. She just opened her arms. Marcus fell into them and cried until he couldn't breathe. "I've got you, baby," she whispered. "I've got you. You're not alone." For the next year, she held him every night. She slept on a chair beside his bed because he was afraid of the dark. She made him breakfast when his father forgot. She packed his lunch when the nannies quit. She helped him with his homework when the tutors stopped coming because his father forgot to pay them. She was there, always there. The only constant in a world that kept falling apart. And now she was stealing from him. The thought made Marcus's stomach turn, not with anger, with something worse. Disappointment, betrayal, the bitter taste of discovering that the one person you trusted was just like everyone else. The service door opened. Marcus straightened in his seat, every muscle tense. There she was, Dorothy Mae Williams, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, same brown coat she'd worn for 10 years. And those bags, 2 of them, heavy enough to bend her shoulders forward. She looked left, then right, then over her shoulder at the building behind her. Classic guilty behavior. Marcus had seen it 1,000 times in boardrooms, the way people acted when they had something to hide. Dorothy started walking toward the bus stop. Marcus waited until she was half a block ahead. Then he pulled out slowly, headlights off, following at a distance. His phone buzzed again. A text from Vanessa. "This is insane. Call me back now." He ignored it. Dorothy reached the bus stop. An old man was already there, shivering in a jacket too thin for February in Boston. Dorothy said something to him. The old man shook his head, wrapping his arms around himself. Dorothy reached into one of her bags and pulled out a thermos. Marcus frowned. What the hell? The old man took the thermos with both hands. He held it like it was precious, like it was the most valuable thing anyone had ever given him. He said something to Dorothy. She shook her head and patted his shoulder. The bus came. Dorothy got on. The old man stayed behind, clutching the thermos, watching the bus disappear. Marcus followed in his car. The bus wound through the city. They left Back Bay behind, left the gleaming towers and boutique hotels and restaurants where a single meal cost more than most people made in a week. The streets got narrower. The buildings got older. Graffiti covered brick walls. Metal bars protected store windows. Roxbury, one of Boston's poorest neighborhoods. One of the neighborhood's Sterling Development had been systematically buying up for 5 years. Marcus owned 32 buildings here. He'd approved renovation plans, signed displacement notices, celebrated when property values tripled. He'd never actually set foot in the neighborhood, not once. The bus stopped at Dudley Square. Dorothy got off. Marcus parked on a side street and watched her walk. Her pace was slower now. The bags were clearly getting heavy, but she didn't stop. Didn't rest, just kept moving one foot in front of the other, turning down a side street, then into a narrow alley. Marcus got out of his car. The February wind cut through his $4,000 cashmere coat. His $800 Italian shoes splashed through a puddle of dirty slush. He followed her into the alley. An old Baptist church stood at the end, red brick paint peeling off in strips. A wooden cross on the steeple tilted slightly to one side, like it was tired of standing straight. A hand-painted sign by the back door read, Community Hope Center. All welcome. Dorothy stopped at the door and knocked. 3 quick raps. The door opened from inside. Warm yellow light spilled out. Someone laughed. A child's voice called out something Marcus couldn't hear. Dorothy stepped inside. The door closed behind her. Marcus stood in the alley, his breath coming out in clouds. His heart was pounding, not from the cold, from something else, something he couldn't name. What was she doing in there? He walked to the door, put his hand on the handle, hesitated. Did he really want to know? Yes, he had to know. He opened the door. The smell hit him first. Onions, garlic, bread baking, something rich and savory that made his stomach growl despite the 5-star dinner he'd had 3 hours ago. The sound hit him next. Voices, dozens of them, talking, laughing, crying, coughing. The scrape of chairs, the clatter of spoons against bowls, a child singing off-key. Marcus stepped through a short hallway and emerged into a basement. What he saw made him stop dead. The room was packed with people. Men in worn coats and dirty boots huddled at folding tables. Women with tired eyes and rough hands bounced babies on their laps. Children in clothes too thin for winter did homework with stubby crayons. Elderly people wrapped in donated blankets held steaming cups with hands that trembled from age or cold or both. They were all eating, every single one of them. Bowls of thick soup, chunks of fresh bread, fruit cut into careful equal pieces. And in the center of it all, behind a long table covered with pots and serving trays, stood Dorothy. But she looked different. Her hair was down, falling in silver waves around her shoulders. She wore an old sweater with patches on both elbows and a stain on the front that looked like tomato sauce. Her face was flushed from the heat of the stove behind her, and she was smiling. Not the polite, professional smile she gave Marcus at the penthouse. Not the careful, measured expression she wore when she served his breakfast or ironed his shirts. This was something else entirely. Something real. Something radiant. Something alive. "Miss Dot, you got more of that soup." A young black man in a military jacket approached the serving table. He walked with a slight limp favoring his left leg. He couldn't have been older than 30, but his eyes looked ancient. Haunted by things Marcus couldn't imagine. "You know I saved extra for you, Darnell." Dorothy's voice was warm and tender, nothing like the formal, careful tone she used at the penthouse. "And I made cornbread tonight. Extra butter, just how you like it." Darnell's face transformed when he smiled. The haunted look faded. He looked young again, almost hopeful. "Miss Dot, what would we do without you? You'd figure it out. But you don't have to. Now eat before it gets cold." A little girl appeared at Dorothy's elbow. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, missing a front tooth, eyes too big for her thin face, hair in messy braids that someone had tried to make neat but hadn't quite succeeded. "Miss Dot." Dorothy's face softened even more. She knelt down so she was eye level with the child. "What is it, baby? Where does all the food come from?" Dorothy touched the girl's cheek with a tenderness that made something crack inside Marcus's chest. "I make it with love, sweetheart, so you can grow up strong and tall and smart, so you can be anything you want to be." "Can I be a doctor?" "You can be the best doctor in the whole world." The little girl beamed. She threw her arms around Dorothy's neck and hugged her tight. Dorothy hugged her back, closing her eyes, holding on like the child was precious, like she was the most important thing in the universe. Marcus couldn't breathe. He looked at the bags Dorothy had brought. They were open now, empty, discarded in a corner. Their contents were spread across the serving table. Bread, fruit, vegetables, containers of homemade soup, packages of crackers, jars of peanut butter, not stolen, given. She wasn't taking things from his penthouse. She was buying groceries, with her own money, her own paycheck, the modest salary he paid her for 34 years of service, and she was spending it here, on these people, on strangers who had nothing. People his company had probably made homeless in the first place. Marcus's legs felt weak. He stepped backward trying to process what he was seeing and bumped into someone. "Hey, watch it." He turned. An old man stood behind him, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. Gray stubble covered his chin. His eyes were rheumy but sharp. He wore a coat with holes in the elbows and boots held together with duct tape. "Sorry," Marcus said automatically. "I was just leaving." The old man's eyes narrowed. He looked Marcus up and down, the cashmere coat, the Italian shoes, the Rolex glinting at his wrist. "You're him," the old man said slowly. Recognition dawned on his weathered face. "You're Sterling, the developer." Marcus's throat tightened. "How do you know who I am?" "I know your face. Saw it in the paper when you bought my building." The old man's voice was flat, calm, like he was discussing the weather and not the destruction of his entire life. "Madison Street, Building 42 and 10. I lived there for 42 years, raised my kids there, buried my wife from there." Something cold settled in Marcus's stomach. "You gave me 60 days to get out," the old man continued. 60 days to leave the only home I'd known for 4 decades. "The buyout," Marcus started, $15,000. The old man laughed, but there was no humor in it. 42 years and you gave me $15,000. You know how long 15,000 lasts when you're 73 and nobody wants to hire you?" Marcus didn't answer. He'd never thought about it, never had to. 6 months, the old man said. That's how long it lasted. Rent, food, medicine, gone in 6 months. He gestured around the basement with his cane. "Now I eat here 3 times a week. Sleep at the shelter when there's room. When there's not, I sleep outside. 73 years old, sleeping on a bench in the park. Because you wanted to build luxury condos." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. You didn't what? Didn't know? Didn't care?" The old man's voice rose. People were starting to look. "You signed the papers, Mr. Sterling. You made the decision. You took my home and gave me 60 days and $15,000 and never thought about me again." "Jerome," Dorothy's voice cut through the tension. She was walking toward them, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes moved from Jerome to Marcus and back again. Her face was carefully neutral, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. "I see you met our guest," Jerome said. There was something sharp and bitter in his voice. "Mr. Marcus Sterling himself, come to see how the other half lives." "Jerome, that's enough." Is it enough, Miss Dot?" Jerome pointed his cane at Marcus. "This man right here is the reason half these people are homeless. Him and his company and his luxury developments. He comes in here with his fancy coat and his fancy watch looking at us like we're animals in a zoo." "I said that's enough." Something in Dorothy's voice made Jerome stop. He glared at Marcus for a long moment. Then he shook his head and limped away, muttering under his breath. Dorothy looked at Marcus. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should talk outside." They stood in the alley behind the church. The cold air was a relief after the warmth of the basement. Marcus's breath came out in clouds. Dorothy's arms were crossed over her chest, but not in defiance, in protection, like she was holding herself together. "How long have you been following me?" "Tonight was the first time, I swear." "But you've been watching, on the cameras." Marcus felt heat rise to his face despite the cold. "I noticed you leaving late, with the bags. You thought I was stealing from you." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Flat, final, like a judge delivering a verdict. Marcus wanted to deny it, wanted to explain about the patterns, the bags, the suspicious behavior. But the lie wouldn't come, not when she was looking at him like that. "Yes," Dorothy nodded slowly, like she'd expected exactly that answer, like anything else would have been a surprise. 34 years, she said softly. "I've been with your family for 34 years. I was there when your mama got sick. I held her hand when she was too weak to hold anything else. I was there when she died. I watched your daddy fall apart. I watched him crawl into a bottle and never come out." Her voice cracked slightly. "I was there for you, Marcus, every day, every night. When you had nightmares, I held you until you fell asleep. When your daddy forgot your birthday, I baked you a cake and bought you a present with my own money. When you scraped your knee or got in trouble at school or needed someone to talk to, I was there." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I loved you like my own son. I gave you everything I had, everything." Her voice broke. "And you thought I was stealing from you." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Each one landed somewhere deep in his chest, somewhere he'd forgotten existed. "Dorothy, I'm sorry. You didn't what?" Her voice sharpened. You didn't consider, you didn't bother to ask me what I was doing instead of assuming the worst. I should have asked. I know I should have asked. But you didn't, because that's not who you are, is it, Marcus? You don't ask. You assume, you decide, you sign papers and make deals and never think about the people on the other side. She laughed bitterly. You know what the funny thing is? I wasn't even surprised. When I saw you standing in that doorway tonight, I wasn't surprised. I thought, of course he followed me. Of course he assumed I was stealing. Because that's what I am to you. Not a person, not someone you've known your whole life, just an employee. Just a servant, just someone who might be taking what's yours. Marcus's throat was so tight he could barely speak. That's not true. Isn't it? Dorothy stepped closer. Then tell me my middle name, Marcus. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Tell me when my birthday is. Silence. Tell me where I was born. Tell me if I have brothers or sisters. Tell me anything about my life that doesn't involve serving you. Marcus tried to think, tried to remember. 34 years, thousands of breakfasts, thousands of conversations, and he couldn't answer a single question. I don't know, he whispered. Dorothy nodded. No, you don't. Because you never asked. Because you never cared enough to ask. She pulled her coat tighter around herself. You want to know what's in those bags, food, Marcus. Groceries. Things I buy with my own money. The paycheck you give me. But why? Why do you spend your own money on? Because they're hungry. Her voice rose. Because they have nothing. Because someone has to care about them, and God knows you don't. She pointed at the church. You see that man you were talking to, Jerome? He lived in the same apartment for 42 years. 42 years, Marcus. He raised his children there. He watched his wife die there. That apartment was his whole life, and your company took it from him, gave him 60 days and $15,000 and threw him out like garbage. Marcus felt sick. Half the people in that basement are homeless because of you, Dorothy continued, because of Sterling Development, because you buy buildings and raise rents and push families out onto the streets so you can build luxury condos for people who already have more than they need. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Her voice was sharp as a blade. There's a difference, Marcus. You could have known. The information was there. The displacement reports, the census data, the complaints. You just didn't care enough to look. She shook her head. I've been coming here for 17 years. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Monday. For 17 years, I've been feeding people your company made homeless. And I never asked you for help. Not once. You know why? Marcus couldn't answer. Because I've watched you, Marcus. I've watched you become exactly like your father. Cold, calculating, obsessed with money and power. I've watched you sign deals that destroyed communities without even reading the fine print. I've watched you celebrate when property values went up, never once thinking about the families who couldn't afford to stay. Tears streamed down her face. I couldn't ask you for help, because your help always comes with a price. You'd want to put your name on it. You'd want to control it. You'd turn their suffering into your tax write-off, your PR opportunity, your way of feeling good about yourself. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I wanted them to stay human, not your charity case, not your redemption project, just human beings eating a warm meal feeling like someone cares about them. Marcus's voice came out as a whisper. Why didn't you tell me about your daughter? Dorothy went very still. How do you know about my daughter? Jerome. He mentioned... Marcus stopped. Jerome hadn't mentioned anything about a daughter. He'd been guessing, fishing. But the look on Dorothy's face told him he'd hit something real. You want to know about my daughter? Dorothy's voice was barely audible. You want to know about Grace? I remember the funeral. 2008. I sent flowers. White lilies, $200. Dorothy laughed bitterly. Your assistant picked them out. You signed the card. You never came to the service. You never asked how she died. You never asked if I was okay. How did she die? Dorothy was silent for so long Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. Diabetes, type 1, diagnosed when she was 15. She stared at something Marcus couldn't see. She was going to be a nurse, wanted to help people. She was 2 years into her program when the symptoms started. Her hands trembled. Insurance wouldn't cover the insulin, not fully. After deductibles and co-pays, it was $300 a month. $300 Marcus. That's what her life was worth. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath his feet. She started rationing her doses, trying to make them last longer. She didn't tell me. Didn't want me to worry. Didn't want me to spend my money on her when I was already working so hard just to keep us afloat. Dorothy's voice broke. I found her in her apartment. She'd been dead for 2 days. 28 years old, died alone because she couldn't afford $300 a month. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. So I started coming here, Dorothy continued, to the church, started cooking, started feeding people, because I couldn't save my daughter, but maybe I could save someone else. Maybe I could make sure no one else died alone and hungry and forgotten. She looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much grief. 17 years, every week. I spend half my paycheck on groceries. I cook for hours. I serve food until my back aches and my feet swell and I can barely stand. And then I go home to an empty house and look at pictures of my daughter and wonder what I could have done differently. Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. He blinked them back. Why didn't you ask for help? Ask for more money, I would have... Would have what? Dorothy cut him off. Given me a raise, matched my donations, put your name on a plaque on the wall. She shook her head. I didn't want your money, Marcus. I wanted you to see, to open your eyes and look at the world around you, to notice the people you were hurting. But you never did. You just kept building and buying and making more money while people like Jerome slept on park benches. She turned toward the church door. I need to go back inside. People are still hungry. Dorothy, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. I want to help. Whatever you need. Money supplies a bigger space. I can buy you a building. I can set up a foundation. I can... You still don't understand. She turned to face him. I don't want you to write a check, Marcus. I want you to change. Really change. Not just throw money at the problem so you can feel better about yourself. Then tell me how. Tell me what to do. She studied him for a long moment. Her eyes were searching, weighing, deciding. Come back Thursday, she finally said. 7 o'clock. Don't bring your checkbook. Bring yourself. Serve soup. Talk to people. Look them in the eye. Learn their names. I'll be there. We'll see. She went back inside. Marcus stood in the alley for a long time. The cold seeped through his coat. His expensive shoes were ruined. His phone kept buzzing with calls and texts he didn't answer. Vanessa, Thomas, his assistant, the Hong Kong investors, a world that demanded his attention, his decisions, his signature on papers that would change people's lives. He ignored all of it, because somewhere in that basement, a woman who had loved him for 34 years was feeding people he had made homeless. A woman whose daughter had died because she couldn't afford insulin. A woman who had given him everything and received nothing in return, and he didn't even know her middle name. At 2 a.m., the church lights finally went out. Dorothy emerged, empty bags in hand. She looked exhausted. Her shoulders sagged. Her steps were slow and heavy. Marcus pulled his car up beside her. "Get in." She looked at him through the window. Her face was tired but unsurprised, like she'd expected him to still be there. "You should be home in bed, Marcus. You have meetings tomorrow." "Get in, Dorothy, please." She hesitated. Then with a small sigh, she opened the door and got in. They drove in silence through the empty streets. The city looked different at this hour, quieter, more honest. The towers Marcus had built loomed against the dark sky like monuments to his own ambition. "The Hong Kong deal," Dorothy said finally. "Vanessa called me looking for you. She sounded upset." "It fell through. I wasn't there for the call. $400 million. "Yes. And you don't care." Marcus thought about that, really thought about it. "No," he said. "I don't." Dorothy looked at him. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, but something close to it. "Pull over here." Marcus pulled to the curb. They were in Mattapan now, outside a small house with a chain-link fence and a porch light that flickered. "This is where I live," Dorothy said. "Have you ever been here?" Marcus shook his head. 34 years, and you've never seen my home." She opened the car door. "Do you want to come in? See how the other half lives?" It wasn't a kind invitation, but Marcus nodded anyway. The house was small but immaculate, everything in its place. The furniture was old but clean. The walls were covered with photographs in mismatched frames. Marcus stopped in front of one. A young Dorothy in an army uniform standing in front of an American flag. She couldn't have been older than 20. Her eyes were bright and determined. "You were in the military." 12 years, combat medic. Another photograph. Dorothy with a baby in her arms, smiling at the camera. The baby had her eyes. "That's Grace, 3 months old." Marcus moved to the next photo. Grace as a teenager wearing a high school graduation cap and gown, beaming at the camera, full of hope. "She was so smart," Dorothy said softly. "Straight A's, scholarship to nursing school. She wanted to help people. That's all she ever wanted." Marcus's chest ached. The next photograph showed Dorothy in desert fatigues, surrounded by soldiers. Some were bandaged, some were on stretchers. All of them were looking at her like she was the only thing standing between them and death. "Desert Storm," Dorothy said. 1991. Our convoy got ambushed outside Kuwait City. She touched the photo gently. 23 soldiers in my unit, 17 of them wounded. I spent 6 hours dragging them to safety one by one while bullets flew over my head. Marcus stared at her. "You saved 17 lives." 18 if you count myself. She touched her hip. "Still got 2 bullets in here. Doctor said removing them would cause more damage than leaving them in." She walked to a small shelf above the fireplace, reached up and took down a velvet box. Inside was a medal, bronze with a red and blue ribbon. "Bronze Star," Dorothy said, "for extraordinary valor under enemy fire." Marcus couldn't speak. The woman who made his coffee every morning, who folded his shirts and cleaned his bathroom and faded into the background of his life, was a decorated war hero. She'd saved 18 lives. She'd taken bullets for her country, and he'd accused her of stealing. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Dorothy closed the box and put it back on the shelf. When would I have told you, Marcus, while I was making your breakfast, while you were on conference calls worth more than my yearly salary? During one of the many conversations we've never had. She sat down heavily in an old armchair. She suddenly looked every one of her 68 years. I've been invisible to you my whole life. Not just you. Everyone like you. Rich people, powerful people. We're just the help, the servants, the ones who clean up after you and disappear when we're not needed. Her eyes met his. I stopped expecting to be seen a long time ago. It hurts less that way. Marcus sank onto the couch across from her. His legs wouldn't hold him anymore. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing you. For not asking. For assuming the worst. For everything. Sorry is a word, Marcus. Words don't change anything. Then let me do something. Let me prove that I mean it. How? I don't know yet. But I'll figure it out. I'll come Thursday. I'll serve soup. I'll talk to people. I'll learn their names. Dorothy studied him for a long moment. And then what? You'll feel good about yourself for a few hours. You'll go back to your penthouse and sign more deals and displace more families. No. No. Marcus looked around the small house, at the photographs on the wall, at the bronze star on the shelf, at the woman who had loved him for 34 years without ever being loved back. I'm going to change, really change. I don't know how yet. But I know I can't keep living the way I've been living. I can't keep hurting people and pretending I don't notice. Dorothy's eyes softened slightly. You sound like you mean it. I do. We'll see. She stood up slowly, painfully. Her hip was bothering her. It's late. You should go home. Get some sleep. Marcus stood. He walked to the door. Then he stopped and turned back. Your middle name? What is it? Dorothy almost smiled. May. Dorothy May Williams. Dorothy May Williams. Marcus repeated it like a prayer. Born in Alabama. Army combat medic. Bronze Star recipient. Mother of Grace. You looked me up. I should have looked a long time ago. He opened the door. The cold night air rushed in. Thursday, he said. 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Bring comfortable shoes. You'll be standing for hours. I will. He walked down the porch steps. Behind him, he heard Dorothy's voice, soft and uncertain. Marcus. He turned. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm light of her home. Don't make promises you can't keep. These people have been disappointed enough. I won't disappoint them. We'll see. She closed the door. Marcus stood on the sidewalk staring at the small house with its flickering porch light. The cold wind cut through his ruined coat. His feet were numb in his soaked shoes. He'd lost a $400 million deal tonight. His business partner thought he'd gone insane. His phone was full of messages he hadn't answered. None of it mattered. Because somewhere in that house a war hero was going to sleep alone. A mother who had buried her daughter was looking at photographs on her wall. A woman who had saved 18 lives in a war and spent 17 years feeding the homeless with her own paycheck was wondering if the boy she'd raised would finally open his eyes. Marcus got in his car and drove home. But as his Tesla wound through the empty streets past the towers, with his name carved into the steel, he didn't see his empire anymore. He saw Jerome, 73 years old, sleeping on a park bench because Marcus had signed a piece of paper. He saw Grace, 28 years old, dying alone because she couldn't afford $300 a month. He saw Dorothy standing at a stove in a church basement, feeding people with love and cornbread while her own body fell apart. He saw himself for the first time in 36 years, and what he saw made him sick. His phone buzzed. Another text from Vanessa. The Hong Kong deal is officially dead. Chen Development got it. We lost everything. I don't know what happened to you tonight, but whatever it was, I hope it was worth $400 million. Marcus read the message. Then he typed a reply. It was worth more than that. Meet me tomorrow, 8 a.m. We need to talk about the future of this company. He hit send. Then he turned off his phone and drove through the sleeping city past the monuments to his ambition, past the buildings that bore his name, past the neighborhoods he'd destroyed, and the families he'd displaced, and the lives he'd ruined, without ever looking back. Somewhere in Mattapan, Dorothy Mae Williams was getting ready for bed. Tomorrow she would take the bus to his penthouse and make his coffee and fold his shirts and pretend that 34 years of invisibility didn't hurt. But Thursday, everything would be different. Thursday, Marcus Sterling was going to stand in a church basement and serve soup to people his company had made homeless. He was going to look them in the eye and learn their names and hear their stories, and then he was going to figure out how to make it right. Not with money, not with foundations or tax write-offs or PR campaigns, with change, real change. The kind that hurt, the kind that cost something, the kind Dorothy had been waiting for since the day she first held him in her arms and whispered, "I've got you, baby. You're not alone." He owed her that much. He owed them all that much. The sun was starting to rise over Boston Harbor when Marcus finally pulled into his parking garage. 62 floors above him, his penthouse waited. Empty, cold, full of expensive things that meant nothing. He sat in his car and watched the light change from gray to gold. Tomorrow he would face Vanessa and the board and the investors and the media. Tomorrow he would have to explain what happened to the Hong Kong deal. Tomorrow his empire would demand answers. But tonight, all he could think about was a thermos of soup and an old man at a bus stop. A little girl asking where the food came from. A photograph of a young woman in a graduation cap who died because $300 was too much to ask. And a voice in the darkness 30 years ago whispering words he'd never forgotten. "I've got you, baby. You're not alone." Dorothy Mae Williams had been holding him up his entire life. Now it was time for Marcus Sterling to finally stand on his own. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study with his laptop open, staring at files he'd never bothered to read before. Displacement reports, tenant complaints, eviction notices. Each document was a life destroyed. Each signature at the bottom was his. By 6 a.m., he'd counted 347 families. In 10 years, Sterling Development had displaced 347 families across Boston. Men, women, children. Pushed out of their homes so Marcus could build luxury condos and boutique hotels. His hands were shaking when Vanessa walked into his office at 8 a.m. sharp. "You look terrible," she said. "Did you sleep at all?" "No." "Good, because I didn't either. I spent the entire night trying to explain to Hong Kong why our CEO disappeared in the middle of a $400 million negotiation." Marcus closed his laptop. "Sit down, Vanessa." "I don't want to sit down. I want to know what the hell happened to you last night." "I said sit down." Something in his voice made her stop. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she sat. "I followed Dorothy last night." Vanessa blinked. "Dorothy, your housekeeper." "She's not just my housekeeper. She raised me." "Okay, you followed her. Why?" "I thought she was stealing from me." Vanessa's expression didn't change. "Was she?" "No." Marcus's voice cracked. "She was spending her own money to feed homeless people at a church in Roxbury. People we made homeless, Vanessa. Our company, our developments, our decisions." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, gentrification is complicated. We're not the only developers in Boston. We can't take responsibility for—" "I met a man named Jerome last night. 73 years old, lived in the same apartment for 42 years. We bought his building, gave him $15,000 and 60 days to leave. Now he sleeps on park benches. That's unfortunate, but unfortunate." Marcus stood up so fast his chair flew backward. "He's 73 years old, Vanessa. He served in Vietnam. He raised his children in that apartment, and now he's homeless because I signed a piece of paper." Vanessa stood too. "What do you want me to say, Marcus? That we're terrible people, that we should have left those buildings to rot. We've created thousands of jobs. We've increased property values. We've improved neighborhoods." For who? Who did we improve them for? Not for Jerome. Not for the 347 families we've displaced in the last 10 years. "And you counted—" I counted. Vanessa walked to the window. She stared out at the Boston skyline. Marcus's skyline. Their skyline. What are you saying, Marcus? You want to shut down the company, give all the money back. That's not how business works. I'm saying we need to change how we develop, who we develop for, what happens to the people who were there before us. Vanessa turned around. The board will never go for it. Then I'll convince them. You'll destroy everything we've built. Maybe what we've built deserves to be destroyed. Vanessa stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Who are you right now? Because you're not the Marcus Sterling I've known for 12 years. Maybe that Marcus Sterling was wrong. Maybe he was blind. Maybe he spent his whole life hurting people and pretending it didn't matter. And what one night following your housekeeper changed everything? Marcus thought about Dorothy's face in the church basement. The way she smiled at that little girl. The way she knelt down and touched her cheek. The way she gave everything she had to people who had nothing. Yes, he said. One night changed everything. Vanessa shook her head. You're having some kind of breakdown. Take a few days off. Get some rest. We'll talk when you're thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Marcus, I want a full report on every property we've acquired in the last 10 years, every family we've displaced, names, addresses, current status. I want to know where they went. I want to know what happened to them. Vanessa laughed. That will take months and cost a fortune. Then it takes months and costs a fortune. I don't care. The board meets Friday. They're expecting good news about Hong Kong. Tell them I'll have something better. Better than $400 million. Marcus looked at her, really looked, at his partner of 12 years, at the woman who'd helped him build everything, at someone who'd become exactly like him without either of them noticing. Yes, he said, better than $400 million. Vanessa studied his face for a long time. Then she sighed. Fine, I'll get you the report, but when this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. She walked out. Marcus sat back down at his desk. His hands were still shaking. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Jerome. Dorothy gave me your number. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm watching you. These people have been hurt enough. Marcus stared at the message. Then he typed a reply. No game. I'll be there Thursday. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. We'll see. Tuesday passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls and documents Marcus couldn't focus on. Wednesday was worse. He kept thinking about the church basement, about Dorothy, about Jerome's eyes full of suspicion and old pain. By Wednesday night, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He drove to Roxbury without telling anyone, parked outside the church, sat in his car for an hour, watching the building gathering courage. Finally, he got out. The basement door was locked, but light spilled from the windows. Someone was inside. Marcus knocked. Footsteps. The door opened. Darnell stood there, the young veteran from Monday night. His eyes narrowed when he saw Marcus. Kitchen's closed. Come back Thursday. I'm not here for food. I'm looking for Dorothy. Miss Dot went home hours ago. Darnell didn't move from the doorway. You're Sterling Wright, the developer. Yes. Jerome told me about you. Said you followed Miss Dot here like some kind of stalker. I thought... Marcus stopped. What was the point of explaining, I made a mistake? I'm trying to make it right. Darnell laughed bitterly. You can't make it right. You know how many of us are here because of your company, because of your renovations and your developments. How many? At least half. Maybe more. Darnell leaned against the doorframe. You want to know my story? I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. IEDs, firefights, watched my best friend die in my arms, came home with PTSD so bad I couldn't hold a job. His jaw tightened. I was doing okay for a while. Had a little apartment on Madison Street. Disability check covered the rent. Then your company bought the building. Rent went from $800 to $2,000. Marcus felt sick. I couldn't afford it. Nobody could. The whole building emptied out in 3 months. 60 families. Gone. Scattered. Some went to shelters. Some went to the streets. Some just disappeared. Darnell's eyes bore into Marcus. I was lucky. Miss Dot found me sleeping behind this church, took me in, got me help. But not everyone's that lucky, Mr. Sterling. Not everyone has a Miss Dot. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back my apartment. Sorry doesn't undo 3 years of sleeping in shelters and eating at soup kitchens. Sorry doesn't fix anything. Then what does... Darnell was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped back from the door. Come inside. The basement looked different, empty, smaller. The folding tables were stacked against the wall. The chairs were piled in the corner. But the smell of old soup still lingered, something warm and familiar. Darnell led Marcus to a small office at the back. The walls were covered with photographs. Faces, hundreds of faces. Men, women, children, some smiling, some not. These are the people Miss Dot has helped, Darnell said. 17 years of faces, 17 years of names. Marcus looked at the photos. Each one was labeled with a small index card. Names, dates, stories. Maria Santos, single mother, 3 kids, worked 2 jobs until her building got bought, now lives in a shelter 40 minutes from her workplace. Jerome Carter, Vietnam veteran, 42 years in the same apartment, now homeless. Tamika Washington, 23, nursing student, had to drop out when she lost her housing, dreams deferred indefinitely. Marcus's throat tightened. Miss Dot keeps track of everyone, Darnell said. Checks on them, helps them when she can. She's got a notebook with every name, every story, every outcome. How does she do it on her salary? She gives up everything. Darnell's voice softened. Lives in a tiny house, drives an old car, hasn't bought herself new clothes in years. Every spare dollar goes to this place, to these people. Marcus thought about his penthouse, his car collection, his wine cellar worth more than most people made in a decade. And she never asked me for help. Would you have listened? Marcus couldn't answer. They both knew the truth. She's dying, you know. Marcus's blood went cold. What? Darnell's face was grim. Her health. It's been bad for years. Diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney problems. She needs medication she can't afford. Needs surgeries she keeps putting off. She's killing herself to keep this place running. Why didn't she tell me? Would you have noticed if she had? The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. I talked to Jerome, Darnell continued. He doesn't trust you. Thinks you're here to make yourself feel better. Write a check. Take a photo, go back to your penthouse, feeling like a good person. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Marcus looked at the wall of photographs. All those faces, all those lives, all touched by a woman he'd taken for granted for 34 years. Because I woke up. Because I saw something I can't unsee. Because for the first time in my life, I realized that everything I built was built on other people's suffering. Darnell studied him for a long moment. You know what Miss Dot said about you after you left Monday night? What? She said you were still in there somewhere. The little boy she raised. The one who cried when his mother died. The one who cared about people before he learned not to. Marcus's eyes burned. She said if anyone could change, you could. But you'd have to want it more than anything. More than money. More than power. More than being comfortable. I do want it. Prove it. How? Darnell walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a thick folder, dropped it on the desk in front of Marcus. This is the Riverside Project. Your company announced it 6 months ago. 200 luxury condos, retail space, rooftop pool. Very nice. Marcus recognized the project. It was supposed to be the crown jewel of their portfolio. There are currently 127 families living in that building, working-class people. Some have been there for generations. Your company is planning to buy them out and demolish the whole block. I know. Do you know their names? Marcus was silent. Do you know that Mrs. Patterson in 4B is 86 years old and has lived there since 1962? That the Mendez family in 2C has 4 kids in the local school? That Mr. Kim in 6A just finished cancer treatment and can't afford to move? Marcus didn't know any of that. He'd seen the project as numbers, units, square footage, profit margins. If you want to change, Darnell said, start there. Don't displace those families. Find another way. The board already approved the project. We've already made commitments to investors. Then unapprove it. Uncommit. It's not that simple. Nothing worth doing is simple, Mr. Sterling. Darnell pushed the folder toward him. Thursday night, you're going to stand in this basement and serve soup to people your company has hurt. You're going to look them in the eye. You're going to hear their stories. He leaned forward. And then you're going to decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind who writes checks and walks away, or the kind who actually changes things. Marcus picked up the folder. It was heavy, heavy with lives, heavy with consequences. I'll be here Thursday. I know you will. Miss Dott's counting on it. Darnell walked him to the door. One more thing, Mr. Sterling. Marcus turned. If you hurt her, if you disappoint her, if you break her heart again, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how many buildings have your name on them. I will make you regret it. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I understand. Good. Darnell opened the door. See you Thursday. Thursday arrived. Marcus left his office at 5 p.m., ignored the stack of papers on his desk, ignored the emails flooding his inbox, ignored the missed calls from Vanessa and the board members and the investors. He drove to Roxbury in silence. No music, no phone calls. Just the sound of his own breathing and the traffic outside. He parked behind the church at 6:45 p.m., sat in his car for 5 minutes trying to calm his racing heart. This was stupid. He was Marcus Sterling. He ran a billion-dollar company. He'd negotiated with heads of state. He'd faced down hostile takeovers and market crashes and every kind of business crisis. But the thought of walking into that basement terrified him. At 6:55 p.m., he got out of the car. Dorothy was waiting by the back door. She was wearing the same old sweater from Monday night. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was tired but expectant. You came. I said I would. People say a lot of things, Marcus. Not many follow through. She looked him up and down. He was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No cashmere, no designer labels. He'd changed 3 times before leaving the penthouse. Follow me, she said. We have work to do. The kitchen was hot and chaotic. Steam rose from giant pots. Volunteers moved around each other in a practice dance. Someone was chopping vegetables. Someone was stirring soup. Someone was slicing bread. Dorothy handed Marcus an apron. You're on serving duty. When people come through the line, you fill their bowls. Not too full, not too empty. We need to make sure everyone gets some. Got it. And Marcus? He looked at her. Look them in the eye. Say something kind. These people are used to being invisible. Show them they're not. At 7 p.m., the doors opened. They came in waves. Old and young, men and women, families with children, veterans in worn jackets, people with shopping carts full of everything they owned. Marcus stood behind the serving table, ladle in hand, and faced them one by one. The first person in line was a woman about his age. 2 small children clung to her legs. Her eyes were hollow with exhaustion. Thank you, she said quietly when Marcus filled her bowl. You're welcome. The words felt inadequate. Is there anything else you need? She looked surprised, like no one had asked her that in a long time. We're okay. Thank you for asking. She moved on. The next person stepped up, an elderly man with shaking hands. Evening, son. Good evening, sir. Soup. Please, extra bread if you've got it. Marcus added an extra piece of bread to his tray. The man smiled, revealing gaps where teeth should have been. God bless you, young man. Marcus's throat tightened. You too, sir. Person after person, story after story, faces he would never forget. A mother whose apartment had been condemned, a veteran who'd lost everything to addiction, a teenager whose family had been evicted 6 months ago, a grandmother raising 3 grandchildren on a fixed income that didn't stretch far enough. And then Jerome appeared in line. He looked at Marcus for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Marcus filled his bowl, added extra cornbread, handed it over. Thank you for coming, Jerome said quietly. Miss Dott said you would. I didn't believe her. I almost didn't come. I was scared. Jerome's eyebrows rose. Scared you're a billionaire. Billionaires get scared too. We just hide it better. Something shifted in Jerome's expression. Not quite forgiveness, but something close to acknowledgement. "Don't let her down," he said. "She's given too much to be let down again." "I won't." Jerome nodded once. Then he shuffled toward a table, balancing his tray carefully. The line kept moving. Marcus kept serving. His back ached, his feet throbbed, sweat dripped down his face. But he didn't stop, didn't complain, didn't look at his watch. For 3 hours he was just another volunteer, just another person trying to help. And somewhere in those 3 hours, something inside him cracked open. At 10 p.m., the last person had been served. The basement slowly emptied. Volunteers started cleaning up stacking chairs, washing dishes. Marcus grabbed a mop and started cleaning the floor. Dorothy appeared beside him. "You don't have to do that. I want to." She watched him mop for a moment. Then she took a rag and started wiping down tables beside him. They worked in silence for a while. "You did good tonight," Dorothy finally said. "People noticed. I just served soup." "You did more than that. You saw them. They felt it." Marcus stopped mopping, leaned on the handle, looked at her. "Darnell told me you're sick, that you need medication you can't afford, surgeries you keep putting off." Dorothy's face tightened. "Darnell talks too much. Is it true?" She was quiet for a long moment. "It's nothing I can't handle." "Dorothy, I've been handling things my whole life, Marcus, long before you were born. I'll handle this too. Let me help, please. Let me pay for your treatment. Let me—" "No." The word was sharp, final. "This isn't about money. This was never about money." "Then what is it about?" Dorothy put down her rag, looked at him with eyes that held 34 years of love and pain and hope. "It's about you, Marcus. About whether you can really change. Not just write checks, not just show up one night and feel good about yourself, but really, truly change. Become the man I always believed you could be." Her voice softened. "I don't need your money. I need you to use your power for something other than yourself. I need you to see all the people you've hurt and decide to stop hurting them. I need you to choose compassion over profit just once." She touched his face, the way she used to when he was a child. "Can you do that, Marcus? Can you give up something that matters? Something that costs you? Something that changes everything?" Marcus thought about the Riverside project. 127 families, the board meeting tomorrow, the investors waiting for returns. "Yes," he said. "I can." Dorothy's eyes searched his face. "Don't say it unless you mean it." "I mean it." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "We'll see." She picked up her rag and went back to cleaning. Marcus stood there holding his mop, feeling the weight of the promise he'd just made. Tomorrow he would face the board. Tomorrow he would tell them the Riverside project was dead. Tomorrow he would watch his empire start to crumble. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. He was ready. Friday morning, 9 a.m. Marcus walked into the Sterling Development boardroom with the Riverside folder under his arm. 8 faces turned toward him. 8 people who had made millions from his decisions. 8 people who were about to watch him destroy everything. Vanessa sat at the far end of the table, her expression unreadable. She'd seen the agenda he'd sent at midnight. She knew what was coming. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus said. He didn't sit down. "Thank you for coming on short notice." Richard Chen, the oldest board member, cleared his throat. "We heard about Hong Kong, Marcus. $400 million. That's a significant loss." "Hong Kong isn't why I called this meeting." "Then what is?" Marcus placed the Riverside folder on the table, pushed it toward the center. "I'm canceling the Riverside project." Silence. Complete stunned silence. Then everyone started talking at once. "You can't be serious." "We've already committed $50 million in deposits. The investors will sue us into oblivion." "Marcus, have you lost your mind?" Marcus held up his hand. The room quieted. "There are 127 families living in that building. Working-class people. Some have been there for generations. If we proceed with this project, we will destroy their lives." Richard leaned forward. "That's what buyouts are for. We offer fair market value, They relocate. It's standard practice. Fair market value for Mrs. Patterson in 4B is $15,000. She's 86 years old. She's lived there since 1962. Where exactly is she supposed to relocate to? That's not our concern. It should be. Vanessa finally spoke. Marcus, I understand you've had some kind of awakening this week, but this isn't a charity. We have obligations to our investors, to our shareholders, to each other. I know what our obligations are. Then you know we can't just cancel a $200 million project because you feel guilty. Marcus looked around the table. At these people he'd worked with for years, at these faces that had celebrated every deal, every acquisition, every profit margin. I spent Thursday night serving soup to homeless people, he said quietly. People our company made homeless. I looked them in the eye. I heard their stories. I saw what we've done. Marcus. There was a woman named Maria, single mother, 3 kids. She worked 2 jobs until we bought her building and raised the rent beyond anything she could afford. Now she lives in a shelter 40 minutes from her workplace. She spends 4 hours a day on buses just to get to jobs that barely pay enough to feed her children. He picked up the folder. There was a man named Jerome, 73 years old, Vietnam veteran, lived in the same apartment for 42 years. We gave him $15,000 and 60 days to leave. Now he sleeps on park benches. Richard stood up. This is emotional manipulation. We're business people, Marcus. We make hard decisions. That's what we do. And we never ask who pays for those decisions. We never look at the human cost. We just count our profits and move on. Because that's how business works. Then maybe we need to change how business works. The room erupted again, angry voices, accusations, threats. Marcus let them rage. He'd expected this, had prepared for it. When the noise finally died down, he spoke again. I'm not asking for permission. I'm the majority shareholder. I'm the CEO. I'm telling you what's going to happen. The Riverside project is dead. We're going to find another way. A way that doesn't destroy 127 families. Richard's face was red with anger. And if we disagree, then you can sell your shares and leave. More silence. This time it was different. Colder. More dangerous. Vanessa stood slowly. Can I speak to Marcus alone, please? The board members looked at each other. Then one by one they filed out. Richard was the last to leave. He stopped at the door. You're making a mistake, Marcus. A mistake that will destroy this company. Maybe some things should be destroyed. Richard shook his head and left. Vanessa waited until the door closed. Then she turned on Marcus. What the hell are you doing? What I should have done years ago. You're throwing away everything we've built. Everything. Do you understand that? I understand perfectly. No, you don't. Vanessa's voice rose. I've stood by you for 12 years. 12 years, Marcus. I've sacrificed my marriage, my health, my relationship with my daughter, all for this company, all for our vision. Our vision was wrong. Our vision made us billionaires. Our vision made us monsters. Vanessa stepped back like he'd slapped her. How dare you? I'm not a monster. I'm a businesswoman. There's a difference. Is there? We've displaced thousands of families. We've destroyed communities. We've made ourselves rich by making others poor. How is that not monstrous? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, of rage. I believed in you. I trusted you, and now you're throwing it all away because your housekeeper made you feel guilty. Dorothy didn't make me feel guilty. She made me see. There's a difference. See what that life is unfair, that some people have less than others. That's not news, Marcus. That's reality. Reality can change. We can change it. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You sound like a child. A naive, foolish child. Maybe, but I'd rather be a naive child than a comfortable monster. Vanessa grabbed her briefcase. Her hands were shaking. I'm calling an emergency shareholders meeting. If you won't see reason, the board will remove you. They can try. They'll succeed. You don't have as many allies as you think. She walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. We were friends once, Marcus. Real friends. I cared about you. I cared about you too. Then why are you doing this to me? Marcus looked at her, at this woman who had been his partner, his confidant, his ally for 12 years. Because caring about each other isn't enough. We have to care about everyone, or we're just kidding ourselves about who we really are. Vanessa's face hardened. I'll see you at the shareholders' meeting. Don't expect mercy. She left. Marcus stood alone in the empty boardroom. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He'd just declared war on his own company, on his own partners, on everything he'd spent his life building, and it felt right. His phone buzzed, a text from Dorothy. How did it go? Marcus typed back. About as well as expected. They think I've lost my mind. Have you? Maybe. Probably. I don't know. A long pause. Then her reply. Come to the church tonight, 7 p.m. There's someone I want you to meet. Friday, 7 p.m. Marcus arrived at the church to find Dorothy waiting outside. She wasn't alone. A young woman stood beside her, late 20s, professional attire, briefcase in hand. She looked nervous. Marcus, this is Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Richard, Dorothy added with a small smile. She's a community development specialist, works with the city on housing initiatives. Sarah extended her hand. Mr. Sterling, it's an honor to meet you. Please call me Marcus. Sarah has an idea, Dorothy said, something that might help with your Riverside problem. They went inside. The basement was empty tonight. Quiet. Sarah spread documents across one of the folding tables. I've been tracking your company's developments for years, Sarah said. Not as a critic, as a researcher. I wanted to understand how gentrification works, how it could be done differently. Marcus looked at the papers, charts, graphs, case studies. Most developers see only two options, Sarah continued. Displace existing residents or abandon the project entirely. But there's a third way. It's called community-inclusive development. I've never heard of it. That's because nobody in Boston has tried it on a large scale, but it works. There are examples in Portland, Minneapolis, Atlanta, developments that preserve existing communities while still generating profit. Marcus leaned forward. How, instead of displacing the 127 families at Riverside, you incorporate them, build around them, offer them ownership stakes in the new development, subsidized units mixed with market rate units, community spaces, local hiring preferences. That would reduce our profit margin significantly. By about 40%, Sarah admitted, but you'd still make money, and you wouldn't destroy a community in the process. Marcus studied the documents. The numbers made sense. Barely. But they made sense. Why are you bringing this to me? Sarah glanced at Dorothy. Miss Williams called me yesterday. She said you were different, that you actually wanted to change, not just talk about it. Do you believe her? I don't know yet. Most developers say they want to do better. Then they see the profit margins and change their minds. I'm not most developers. We'll see. Dorothy spoke up. Sarah lost her grandmother to one of your developments 3 years ago, building on Atlantic Street. Her grandmother had lived there for 50 years. Marcus felt the familiar weight of guilt settle on his chest. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back, Sarah said flatly. She died 6 months after we had to move her. Doctors said it was heart failure. But I know the truth. You can't uproot an 80-year-old woman from her home and expect her to survive. Then why are you helping me? Sarah's expression softened slightly. Because I believe in redemption. My grandmother did too. She used to say that the measure of a person isn't their mistakes, it's what they do after they realize they've made them. She gathered her documents. I've prepared a full proposal. Alternative plans for Riverside, community input processes, legal frameworks, everything you'd need to present to your board. They'll never accept it. Probably not, but that's your problem, not mine. I've given you the tools. What you do with them is up to you. She handed him a thick folder, heavier than the one Darnell had given him, full of possibility. Thank you, Marcus said. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you actually follow through. She nodded to Dorothy and left. Marcus sat with the folder in his lap, staring at the pages. A different future, a different way of doing business, a chance to make things right. "What do you think?" Dorothy asked. "I think it's brilliant, and I think my board will laugh me out of the room." "Since when do you care what your board thinks?" Marcus looked at her. Really looked. She seemed thinner than she had a week ago, paler, dark circles under her eyes. "How are you feeling, Dorothy?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "It's just fatigue. I've been busy." "Darnell told me about your health problems, the diabetes, the kidney issues, the surgeries you've been putting off." Dorothy's face tightened. "Darnell needs to learn when to keep his mouth shut. He cares about you. We all care about you." "I don't need caring about. I need to keep doing what I'm doing for as long as I can." "And how long is that?" Silence. "Dorothy." She stood up slowly, walked to the wall of photographs. All those faces, all those lives. "The doctors say I have maybe 2 years if I get treatment, 6 months if I don't." Marcus's blood ran cold. 6 months. Maybe less. My kidneys are failing. Diabetes has done a lot of damage over the years, damage I ignored because I was too busy taking care of everyone else. "Then get the treatment. I'll pay for everything. The best doctors, the best hospitals, whatever you need. And abandon all these people who's going to feed them if I'm in a hospital bed. I will." Dorothy turned to look at him. Her eyes were wet. "You. Yes, me. And anyone else I can convince to help. But I can't do any of it without you, Dorothy. I need you. They need you. You can't just give up." "I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic." Realistic is getting treatment so you can keep fighting. Realistic is letting someone help you for once in your life instead of carrying everything alone. Dorothy's lower lip trembled. For a moment, she looked like a scared old woman instead of the fierce warrior he knew her to be. "I'm tired, Marcus. So tired. I've been fighting for so long, since the war, since Grace died, since your mother passed. I've been holding everything together with sheer willpower, and I don't have much left." Marcus crossed the room and took her hands. They were cold, frail, nothing like the strong hands that had held him through childhood nightmares. "Then let me be strong for both of us, just for a while, just until you get better." Tears streamed down Dorothy's face. "You really mean it, don't you? You're really trying to change." "I am, but I can't do it without you, Dorothy. You're the only person who ever believed in me, the only person who saw something good buried underneath all the greed and ambition. I need you to keep believing. Please." Dorothy squeezed his hands. Okay. I'll get the treatment, but on one condition." "Anything." "You have to promise me no matter what happens, you'll take care of these people, this church, this community. You'll keep fighting even when I can't. I promise. And you'll cancel the Riverside project. Find another way, Sarah's way. I promise. And you'll stop treating people like numbers on a spreadsheet. You'll see them, really see them, the way I taught you to see when you were a little boy." Marcus felt tears running down his own face now. "I promise." Dorothy pulled him into a hug. He buried his face in her shoulder, sobbing like the child he'd once been, like the little boy who'd lost his mother and found comfort in her arms. "I'm so proud of you, Marcus," she whispered. "So proud of the man you're becoming. I should have become him sooner. You're becoming him now. That's what matters." They held each other for a long time, two broken people, finding strength in each other's weakness. When Marcus finally pulled back, his phone was buzzing. "Vanessa, emergency shareholders meeting, Monday, 9 a.m. Bring your resignation letter." Marcus showed the text to Dorothy. "They're coming for me." "Are you scared?" "Terrified." Dorothy smiled. "Good. Fear means you have something worth fighting for. Now go home. Get some rest. You've got a battle ahead." Marcus kissed her forehead. "I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be here. I'm always here." He walked out into the cold night. The stars were visible for once, bright points of light against the darkness. His phone buzzed again. This time it was an email, from an address he didn't recognize. He opened it. "Mr. Sterling, I represent a group of investors who've been watching your recent activities with great interest. We believe in community-inclusive development. We believe in doing business differently, and we believe in you. If you're serious about changing Sterling development, we'd like to help. Meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Your choice of location. The email was signed with a single name. Eleanor Mitchell. Marcus knew that name. Everyone in Boston knew that name. Eleanor Mitchell was one of the wealthiest philanthropists in America. She'd made billions in tech before turning to impact investing. She never took meetings, never responded to pitches, and she was reaching out to him. Marcus typed a reply. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Community Hope Center, Roxbury. He hit send and got in his car. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time, he wasn't fighting alone. Saturday, 10 a.m. Eleanor Mitchell was not what Marcus expected. She was 73 years old, small and sharp-eyed, with silver hair cut short and practical. She arrived at the church in a modest sedan, dressed in clothes that cost less than Marcus's belt. Mr. Sterling, her handshake was firm, thank you for choosing this location. Most developers would have insisted on their corner office. I'm not most developers, apparently. So I've heard. They went inside. Jerome was there setting up tables for lunch service. He looked at Eleanor with suspicion. Another rich person come to gawk at the poor folks. Eleanor laughed. I grew up 3 blocks from here. My father worked at the factory on Dudley Street. My mother cleaned houses for families in Back Bay. I know exactly who you are, Jerome Carter. We went to the same elementary school. Jerome squinted at her. Recognition slowly dawned. Ellie from the Mitchell family. The one who used to steal apples from Mr. Kim's grocery. Guilty as charged. Jerome's face broke into a grin. Well, I'll be damned. Ellie Mitchell. They said you became some kind of tech billionaire. They said a lot of things, most of them true. She patted his arm. It's good to see you, Jerome. I heard what happened to your building. I'm sorry. Jerome glanced at Marcus. Yeah, well, some people are trying to make it right. So I've heard. That's why I'm here. Dorothy appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She stopped when she saw Eleanor. Mrs. Mitchell, I didn't expect to see you here. You know each other, Marcus asked. Eleanor has been donating to this church anonymously for years, Dorothy said. She thinks I don't know. But I know everything that happens in this building. Eleanor smiled. I should have realized you'd figure it out. Why anonymously? Because I didn't want to make it about me. I wanted to help without taking credit. She looked at Marcus pointedly. Something your young man here is still learning. They sat at one of the folding tables. Eleanor pulled out a tablet, swiped through some documents. I've done my research, Mr. Sterling. You've displaced over 2,000 families in 10 years. You've destroyed communities. You've prioritized profit over people at every turn. I know. And now you claim to have changed, in less than a week, after following your housekeeper to a soup kitchen. I know how it sounds. It sounds like a PR stunt, or a midlife crisis, or temporary guilt that will fade as soon as you see the next profit opportunity. I understand your skepticism. Eleanor set down her tablet. So convince me, not with words, with action. What are you prepared to sacrifice? Marcus took a breath. I'm canceling the Riverside project. $200 million. Gone. That's not a sacrifice. That's a delay. You'll find another project. I'm restructuring the entire company. Community-inclusive development only. 40% lower profit margins. Still not a sacrifice. You'll still be rich. Then tell me what sacrifice looks like. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. My husband died 3 years ago. Cancer. We had more money than we could ever spend. But in the end, none of it mattered. What mattered was the time we'd wasted. The years we'd spent building wealth instead of building relationships. The people we'd overlooked. The communities we'd ignored. Her voice softened. When he was dying, he made me promise to spend the rest of my life making up for what we'd missed. Not by writing checks, by being present, by showing up, by sacrificing comfort for connection. She leaned forward. That's what sacrifice looks like, Mr. Sterling. Not giving up money, giving up yourself, your time, your comfort, your carefully constructed identity as a successful businessman. Marcus thought about that. Really thought. I don't know if I can do that. At least you're honest. But I want to try. I want to learn. I want to become the kind of person who shows up, not just once, every time. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Dorothy told me you'd say something like that. She also told me you'd mean it. You spoke to Dorothy. Last night, for 3 hours. She told me everything. Your childhood, your mother's death, your father's decline, the way she raised you when no one else could. Eleanor reached across the table and put her hand on his. She loves you, Marcus, more than you know. She's been waiting 34 years for you to become the man she always believed you could be. Don't let her down. I won't. Good. Because my foundation is prepared to invest $100 million in a new sterling development. A company that builds communities instead of destroying them. A company that proves profit and compassion can coexist. Marcus stared at her. $100 million, with conditions. Dorothy stays involved. The Roxbury community has a voice in all decisions affecting this neighborhood. And you step back from day-to-day operations for 1 year, spend that time here, in this church, learning what it really means to serve. A year my board will remove me in a day. Let them try. With my backing, you'll have enough leverage to resist. And in that year, you'll learn more about leadership than you've learned in your entire career. Marcus looked at Dorothy. She nodded slowly. It's a good offer, Marcus. Take it. What about Vanessa? The shareholders meeting Monday. Leave Vanessa to me, Eleanor said. I've dealt with hostile boards before, and I have resources she can't begin to imagine. She stood up and extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Marcus stood, took her hand. We have a deal. Eleanor smiled. Good. Now I believe there's soup that needs serving, and I didn't drive all the way to Roxbury to sit and talk business. She took off her jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and headed for the kitchen. Marcus watched her go. Jerome laughed beside him. Close your mouth, Mr. Sterling. You look like a fish. Did that really just happen? It happened. Question is, what are you going to do with it? Marcus looked around the basement, at the folding tables and mismatched chairs, at the photographs on the wall, at Dorothy and Eleanor in the kitchen talking like old friends. I'm going to serve soup, he said, and then I'm going to fight for everything that matters. Jerome clapped him on the shoulder. Now you're talking like someone who might actually deserve a second chance. Marcus grabbed an apron and got to work. The battle wasn't over. Monday was coming. Vanessa and the board were waiting. The shareholders' meeting would be brutal. But for the first time in his life, Marcus Sterling wasn't fighting for profit or power or prestige. He was fighting for people. And that made all the difference. Monday morning, 8:47 a.m. Marcus stood outside the Sterling Development headquarters looking up at the building that bore his name, 17 stories of glass and steel. His father had built the first 5 floors. Marcus had added the rest. Every inch of it represented decades of ambition, sacrifice, and compromise. Today, he might lose it all. His phone buzzed. Eleanor. I'm in the lobby. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember what I told you. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't let them make you angry. And most importantly, don't back down. I won't. He walked through the front doors. The security guards nodded at him, same as always. The receptionist smiled, same as always. Everything looked normal. But Marcus could feel the tension in the air. Word had spread. Everyone knew something big was happening. Eleanor was waiting by the elevators. She looked calm, almost bored. Like hostile takeover attempts were just another Tuesday for her. How are you feeling? She asked, terrified. Good. Use it. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. 17 floors. 17 floors to figure out how to save everything that mattered. What if they vote me out? Marcus asked. Then we buy the company from outside and restructure anyway. It'll take longer, cost more, and hurt more people in the process. But we'll get there eventually. That's not very comforting. I'm not here to comfort you, Mr. Sterling. I'm here to win. The elevator opened onto the executive floor. Vanessa was waiting. She looked different, harder. Her eyes were cold, her posture rigid. She'd been his friend for 12 years. Now she looked at him like an enemy. "Marcus, Mrs. Mitchell." Her voice was ice. "The board is waiting." "Good morning to you too, Vanessa," Eleanor said pleasantly. "You look tired. Rough weekend." Vanessa ignored her. "This way." They walked down the hallway toward the main conference room. Marcus could see figures through the glass walls, the entire board, several lawyers, a few faces he didn't recognize. "Who are the strangers?" Marcus asked. "Representatives from our major institutional investors. They have concerns about your recent behavior." Vanessa's voice was clipped. "They're here to observe. Or to vote me out. That too." They reached the conference room doors. Vanessa stopped and turned to face Marcus. "Last chance. Resign now. Keep your dignity. Walk away with your shares and your reputation intact." "No. You'll regret this." "Maybe, but I'd regret walking away more." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Then let's get this over with." She pushed open the doors. The room was packed. Every seat at the table was filled. More people stood along the walls. The energy was hostile, expectant, like a crowd waiting for an execution. Richard Chen sat at the head of the table. He'd positioned himself in Marcus's usual chair. A power move. Obvious, but effective. "Mr. Sterling, thank you for joining us." His voice dripped with false courtesy. "Please have a seat." Marcus walked to the opposite end of the table. Eleanor followed, sitting beside him. "Before we begin," Richard continued, "I want to make clear that this is an official meeting of the Sterling Development Board of Directors and major shareholders. Everything said here will be recorded and may be used in subsequent legal proceedings." "Noted," Marcus said. "Now can we skip the theater and get to the point?" Richard's smile tightened. "Very well. The point, Mr. Sterling, is that you've lost your mind. In the past week, you've abandoned a $400 million deal. You've announced plans to cancel our flagship development project, and you've been seen frequenting a soup kitchen in Roxbury serving food to homeless people like some kind of volunteer. Is there a question in there? The question is simple. What the hell is wrong with you?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Nothing is wrong with me. For the first time in years, something is right." Murmurs around the table. Skeptical. Mocking. Vanessa spoke up. "Marcus, we're trying to help you. We think you're having some kind of breakdown. The stress, the pressure it gets to everyone eventually. There's no shame in stepping back, getting some rest, letting others handle things for a while." "I'm not having a breakdown." "Then explain your behavior." Marcus looked around the room, at all these faces. People he'd worked with, negotiated with, celebrated with. People who saw the world exactly the way he used to see it. "I followed my housekeeper last week," he said quietly. "I thought she was stealing from me. Instead, I discovered she was spending her own money to feed homeless people. People our company had displaced. People who lost their homes because of decisions I made." Silence. "I met a man named Jerome Carter, 73 years old, Vietnam veteran. Lived in the same apartment for 42 years. We bought his building, gave him 60 days and $15,000, and threw him out. Now he sleeps on park benches." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "I met a woman named Maria Santos, single mother, 3 kids. She worked 2 jobs until we priced her out of her neighborhood. Now she spends 4 hours a day on buses just to get to work." "These are sad stories," Richard interrupted. "But they're not our responsibility. We're developers, not social workers. We made them homeless. How is that not our responsibility? We offered fair buyouts. We followed the law. What people do after they leave is their own business." "Fair buyouts," Marcus laughed bitterly. $15,000 for 42 years. That's not fair. That's theft. Vanessa stepped in. "Marcus, this is exactly what we're talking about. You're not thinking clearly. You're making emotional arguments instead of rational ones. Maybe emotional arguments are exactly what this company needs. This company needs leadership, stability, not a CEO who wants to give away our profits to homeless people." Eleanor spoke for the first time. "I'm curious, Ms. Chen. What exactly do you think profits are for—" Vanessa turned to her. "Excuse me. Profits, the money this company generates. What's it for? What's the purpose? To create value for shareholders, to grow the company, to reinvest in new opportunities. And then what? What do you mean? And then what? Eleanor leaned forward. You create value. You grow. You reinvest. And then what? What's the end goal? What's the point of all this wealth accumulation? Vanessa looked confused. The point is success, building something that lasts. And does it last? Your buildings will crumble eventually. Your money will be spent by future generations who didn't earn it. Your name will be forgotten in 100 years. Eleanor's voice was calm but cutting. The only things that truly last are the lives we touch, the communities we build, the people we help when they can't help themselves. Richard stood up. This is ridiculous. We're not here for a philosophy lesson. We're here to address a crisis in leadership. There is no crisis, Marcus said. There's a course correction. A course correction that will cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. Money isn't everything. Easy for you to say. You're already a billionaire. And I'd give up every penny of it if it meant undoing the harm I've caused. The room went quiet. Richard stared at Marcus like he'd grown a second head. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Richard looked around the table, rallying support. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've heard enough. I move that we call a vote of no confidence in Marcus Sterling's leadership. All in favor. Hands went up around the table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, more than half the board. Marcus's heart sank. Richard smiled. The motion passes. Marcus Sterling is hereby removed as CEO of Sterling Development effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Eleanor laughed. Everyone turned to look at her. Something funny, Mrs. Mitchell? Richard asked. Several things, actually. Eleanor stood up slowly, deliberately. First, your vote is invalid. Under the company bylaws, a CEO can only be removed with a 2/3 majority of voting shares present. You have 53%. Not enough. Richard's face reddened. The institutional investors are observers, not voting members. You should have read the fine print before you invited them. Murmurs around the table. Lawyers whispering urgently. Second, Eleanor continued, as of 6 a.m. this morning, the Mitchell Foundation acquired 12% of Sterling Development's outstanding shares. Combined with Mr. Sterling's 34%, we now control 46% of the company. The room exploded. That's impossible. We had agreements with those shareholders. This is illegal. Eleanor held up her hand. All purchases were made through proper channels at fair market value with full regulatory compliance. Your lawyers are welcome to verify. Richard's face was purple with rage. You can't just walk in here and take over our company. I'm not taking over anything. I'm protecting it from people like you who would drive it into the ground for short-term profits. Vanessa stood up. This isn't over. We'll sue. We'll go to the press. We'll make your life a living hell. You're welcome to try. Eleanor's voice was steel. But I've been fighting hostile boards since before you were born. I've faced down oligarchs, politicians, and organized crime. Do you really think you scare me? Vanessa had no answer. Marcus stood up. Here's what's going to happen. The Riverside project is canceled, effective immediately. The 127 families currently living there will be offered long-term leases at their current rates. We're going to develop the property around them, not on top of them. That's financial suicide, Richard protested. No, it's a new business model. Community-inclusive development. Lower margins, but sustainable growth. And most importantly, we stop hurting people. Richard threw his hands up. This is insane. You're destroying everything we've built. I'm building something better. Marcus looked around the room. Anyone who wants to be part of that is welcome to stay. Anyone who doesn't can leave now. You'll receive fair compensation for your shares. No hard feelings. Silence. Then slowly, one of the younger board members stood up. Jennifer Walsh. She'd been quiet throughout the meeting. I'm in, she said. I've been uncomfortable with our practices for years. I just didn't know there was another way. Another board member stood, then another, then two more. Richard watched in disbelief as his coalition crumbled. This is a mistake, he said. You'll all regret this. Maybe, Marcus replied. But it's a mistake we're making with our eyes open. That's more than I can say for the last 10 years. Richard grabbed his briefcase and stormed toward the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. Your father would be ashamed of you. Marcus felt the words hit him like a punch, but he didn't flinch. My father was a drunk who abandoned me when I needed him most. I don't care what he would think. Richard left. 3 other board members followed him. Vanessa remained. She stood alone at her end of the table, looking at Marcus with something that might have been regret. You've won, she said quietly. For now. But this isn't over. It doesn't have to be war, Vanessa. You could stay. Help us build something different. I don't believe in what you're selling. You could learn to. She shook her head. We're not the same people anymore, Marcus. Maybe we never were. She picked up her briefcase and walked out. Marcus watched her go. 12 years of partnership. 12 years of late nights and early mornings and shared victories. Gone in a moment. Eleanor put a hand on his shoulder. You did well. I lost my best friend. You gained something more important. A chance to be the person you were meant to be. Marcus looked around the room, at the remaining board members, at the lawyers shuffling papers, at the future stretching out before him, uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. What now? He asked. Now the real work begins. Monday, 4 p.m. Marcus drove straight to the church after the meeting. He needed to see Dorothy, needed to tell her what had happened. But when he arrived, the basement was empty. No Dorothy, no Jerome, no Darnell, just silence and shadows. Something felt wrong. He called Dorothy's phone. No answer. Called again. Nothing. Panic rising, he drove to her house in Mattapan. Her car was in the driveway. The lights were on inside. He knocked on the door. No response. He knocked again harder. Dorothy, it's Marcus. Are you home? Still nothing. He tried the door handle. Unlocked. His heart hammering, he pushed it open. Dorothy. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. He moved down the hall toward the bedroom and found her. She was lying on the floor beside her bed, unconscious. Her face was gray. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. Dorothy. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. Dorothy, can you hear me? No response. He grabbed his phone, dialed 911. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? I need an ambulance, 2847, Morton Street, Mattapan. My friend collapsed. She's unconscious. She has diabetes and kidney problems. Please hurry. Ambulance is on the way, sir. Can you tell me if she's breathing? Barely. Her breathing is really shallow. Is she responsive at all? No, she won't wake up. Okay, sir. Stay with her. Don't move her. The paramedics will be there in a few minutes. Boom. Marcus stayed on the line, one hand holding the phone, the other holding Dorothy's cold hand. Please don't die, he whispered. Please, I can't lose you. Not now. Not when everything is finally changing. Dorothy didn't respond. Her chest barely moved. The longest 7 minutes of Marcus's life crawled by before he heard sirens. The paramedics took over. They checked her vitals, started an IV, loaded her onto a stretcher. Marcus followed them outside. Are you family? One of the paramedics asked. I'm her son. The lie came automatically. Please, let me come with her. They let him ride in the ambulance. He held Dorothy's hand the whole way, watching the machines beep and flash, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in. Please, he whispered. Please don't take her. I need more time. I need to show her I've changed. I need to make things right. The hospital was a blur. Bright lights, urgent voices, forms to fill out, questions he couldn't answer. Medical history. Diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease. She's been putting off treatment. Any medications? I don't know. She couldn't afford them. Primary care physician. She hasn't seen a doctor in years. The nurse looked at him with something like pity. We'll do everything we can. They wheeled Dorothy away. Marcus was left standing in the waiting room covered in her perfume and his own fear. He called Darnell, told him what happened. "I'm on my way." He called Jerome. Same response. He called Eleanor. The board meeting went well, but Dorothy collapsed. "I'm at Mass General. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Then he sat down in a plastic chair and waited. The waiting room was half full, other people with their own emergencies, their own fears, their own prayers. A mother with a crying baby, an old man clutching rosary beads, a young woman staring at her phone like it might ring with bad news at any moment. Marcus had spent his life avoiding places like this. Hospitals were for other people, sick people, weak people, not billionaires in expensive suits with penthouse apartments and private jets. But here he was, just another scared person waiting for news, just another human being confronting the fragility of life. Darnell arrived first. He looked like he'd run the whole way. "How is she?" "I don't know. They took her back. No one's told me anything." Darnell sat down beside him. His hands were clenched into fists. "She's been pushing herself too hard. I told her to slow down. We all told her, but she wouldn't listen." "She never listens," Marcus said. "Too busy taking care of everyone else." "That's who she is. That's who she's always been." Jerome arrived next, moving slowly with his cane, but moving as fast as he could. Then Eleanor, still in her business clothes from the board meeting. Then Sarah Chen, the community development specialist. Then others. Marcus didn't recognize people from the church, people Dorothy had helped over the years. The waiting room filled up, filled with people who loved Dorothy Mae Williams, filled with lives she had touched. At 7 p.m., a doctor finally emerged. She looked tired. Her face was carefully neutral. "Family for Dorothy Williams." Marcus stood up. "I'm her son." "Mr. Williams, your mother suffered severe diabetic ketoacidosis, complicated by acute kidney failure. She's stable now, but her condition is critical." "Is she going to be okay?" The doctor hesitated. "The next 48 hours will be crucial. Her kidneys are functioning at about 15%. She needs dialysis immediately, and long-term, she'll likely need a transplant." Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. "A transplant?" "Without one, she has maybe 6 months to a year. With dialysis, we can extend that. But dialysis is hard on the body, especially for someone her age with her other conditions." "Can she have visitors?" "One at a time. She's in the ICU. Room 412. Marcus looked at the crowd that had gathered, all these people who loved her, all these lives she had touched. "You all go first," he said. "I'll wait." Darnell shook his head. "No, you're her family. You should be with her." "I'm not." "You are." Jerome's voice was firm. "Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. Go be with her, Mr. Sterling. She'd want that." Marcus walked down the long hospital corridor. His feet felt like lead. His heart felt like it might burst. Room 412. He pushed open the door. Dorothy looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed. Her eyes were closed. Her face was peaceful. Marcus pulled a chair to her bedside, sat down, took her hand. "Hi, Dorothy, it's Marcus." Her eyes fluttered open, slowly focused on his face. "Marcus." Her voice was a whisper, barely audible. "Did you win?" He laughed through his tears. "Yeah, we won. The board backed down. Eleanor came through. We're changing everything." Dorothy smiled weakly. "Good, that's good." "You scared me, Dorothy. Don't do that again." "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to collapse on you." "The doctor says you need a transplant. A kidney transplant." Dorothy closed her eyes. "I know. They've been telling me for years. But transplants are expensive, and the waiting list is long, and I'm old." "You're not old, and money isn't a problem anymore." "Money doesn't buy kidneys, Marcus. There's a list, a waiting list. And at my age with my health problems, I'm not a priority." Marcus gripped her hand tighter. "Then I'll donate. I'll give you one of mine." Dorothy's eyes opened. "What? I have 2 kidneys. You need one. Let me give you one. Marcus, that's insane. You can't just give away an organ. Why not? You gave me everything. Your time, your love, your life. Let me give you something back. Tears rolled down Dorothy's face. You don't understand. We might not even be compatible. The testing takes weeks. And even if we match, the surgery is risky. For both of us. I don't care about the risk. I do. I won't let you put your life in danger for me. It's not your decision. Dorothy laughed weakly, still stubborn as ever. I learned from the best. They sat in silence for a moment. The machines beeped steadily. Life continued fragile and precious. Tell me about the meeting, Dorothy said finally. I want to hear everything. So Marcus told her about Richard's power play, about Eleanor's countermove, about the board members who stayed and the ones who left, about Vanessa walking out, about the future that was finally within reach. Dorothy listened with her eyes closed, a small smile on her face. I'm proud of you, Marcus. So proud. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could. It was always in you. The goodness, the compassion. I just helped you find it. You did more than that. You saved me. Dorothy opened her eyes, looked at him with more love than he'd ever seen. That's what family does. We save each other. Marcus leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Get some rest. I'll be here when you wake up. Promise. Promise. Dorothy closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Marcus stayed by her side, holding her hand, watching the machines that were keeping her alive. Tomorrow, he would talk to the doctors about compatibility testing. Tomorrow, he would start the process of seeing if he could give her the kidney she needed. But tonight, he just sat with her. The woman who had raised him. The woman who had loved him. The woman who had finally taught him what it meant to be human. Outside the hospital room through the window, Marcus could see the Boston skyline. His skyline. The towers with his name on them. They didn't matter anymore. None of it mattered. What mattered was the woman in this bed, the people in the waiting room, the community they were building together. What mattered was love, and for the first time in 36 years, Marcus Sterling finally understood that. 3 days after Dorothy's collapse, Marcus sat in a sterile examination room at Mass General Hospital. A nurse had just drawn 6 vials of blood from his arm. Now he waited for the results that would determine whether he could save the woman who had saved him. Dr. Patel, the transplant coordinator, entered with a clipboard and a neutral expression. Marcus couldn't read her face. Well, Dr. Patel sat down across from him. Mr. Sterling, I have to be honest with you. What you're attempting to do is extraordinary. Living kidney donations are rare enough, but from someone who isn't a blood relative, the compatibility requirements are much more stringent. Just tell me, am I a match or not? Dr. Patel looked at her clipboard, then at Marcus, then back at the clipboard. You're not a perfect match, but you're close enough. Marcus's heart exploded with hope. Close enough. What does that mean? It means the surgery is possible, but the risks are higher than a perfect match. Dorothy's body might reject the kidney. The immunosuppressant drugs she'd need could cause other complications. And for you, there's always a risk with any major surgery. I don't care about the risks. You should. You're 36 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. If something goes wrong, then at least I'll have done something that matters. Dr. Patel studied him for a long moment. Dorothy was right about you. You've spoken to her. This morning, she's awake and alert, and she's refusing the transplant. Marcus's blood went cold. What? She says she won't let you risk your life for hers. She says she's lived a full life and you have too much left to do. Marcus stood up so fast, the chair fell backward. I need to see her, now. Dorothy was sitting up in bed when Marcus burst into her room. She looked better than she had 3 days ago. Color in her cheeks, strength in her eyes. But she also looked stubborn, that look he knew so well. You're refusing the transplant. Good morning to you too, Marcus. Don't good morning me. The doctor says you're refusing. Why? Dorothy set down the cup of water she'd been holding. Because I'm 68 years old. I've lived a full life, and I'm not going to let a 36-year-old man cut out one of his organs for me. That's not your decision to make. It's exactly my decision to make. It's my body, my life, my choice. Marcus grabbed the chair beside her bed and sat down hard. You're being selfish. Dorothy laughed. Selfish? I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need you. The community needs you. Those people at the church, they need you. You can't just give up. I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. The words hung in the air between them. Dorothy's expression hardened. Excuse me. You heard me. You've spent your entire life being brave for everyone else, fighting for everyone else. But when it's your own life on the line, you're too scared to let someone fight for you. That's not... It is. You're afraid to need someone, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to accept help. Marcus leaned forward. Well, too bad, because I'm not giving you a choice. You can't force me to have surgery. No, but I can sit here and argue with you until you change your mind, and I'm extremely stubborn. I know. I raised you. They stared at each other. Warrior versus warrior, neither willing to back down. Finally, Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared, Marcus. Not of dying, of living, of being a burden, of needing someone to take care of me instead of the other way around. Marcus took her hand. You've been taking care of me for 34 years. Let me take care of you now, please. What if something goes wrong? What if the surgery fails? What if you die on that operating table and I have to live with that for whatever time I have left? What if it works? What if you get another 20 years? What if you get to see the church grow into something incredible? What if you get to watch Jerome move into his own apartment again? What if you get to meet the grandchildren? I might have someday. Dorothy's tears fell freely now. You're playing dirty. I learned from the best. She squeezed his hand. You really want to do this? Really knowing all the risks? I've never wanted anything more. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll have the surgery. On one condition. Anything. If something goes wrong if I don't make it, you have to promise me you won't go back to the way you were. You'll keep fighting. Keep serving. Keep seeing people the way I taught you to see them. I promise. And you'll take care of the church, those people, Jerome and Darnell and all the others. I promise. And you'll forgive yourself for all the years you were blind, for all the people you hurt. You'll let go of the guilt and just keep moving forward. Marcus's voice broke. I promise. Dorothy reached up and touched his face. Then let's do this. Together. 2 weeks later, surgery day. Marcus woke up at 4 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. A month ago, he'd been following Dorothy through the streets of Roxbury, convinced she was stealing from him. Now, he was about to give her a piece of himself, literally. His phone buzzed, a text from Eleanor. Thinking of you today. The whole city is praying. Then a text from Darnell. You're crazy, but the good kind of crazy. Miss Dot raised you right. Then one from Jerome. I was wrong about you, Mr. Sterling. You're all right. Marcus smiled despite his nerves. He'd spent his whole life seeking approval from investors and board members and business publications, but these 3 simple texts meant more than any of it. At 5 a.m. he arrived at the hospital. The surgical team was waiting. They explained the procedure one more time, showed him where to sign, asked if he had any questions. Just one, Marcus said. Where is Dorothy? She's already in pre-op. You'll see her before we begin. They wheeled him to a small room where Dorothy lay on a gurney. She was wearing a hospital gown, her silver hair covered by a surgical cap. She looked small and vulnerable and brave all at once. Hey, Marcus said. Hey yourself. How are you feeling? Terrified. You... Same. Dorothy reached out her hand. Marcus took it. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for finally seeing me, for changing, for being willing to do this. Thank you for believing I could change, even when I couldn't see it myself. The surgical team appeared. Time to go. I'll see you on the other side, Marcus said. "You better. We have work to do." They wheeled her away first. Then they came for Marcus. The operating room was cold and bright. Faces behind masks looked down at him. Someone put an IV in his arm. Someone else told him to count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7. Everything went black. Marcus dreamed of his mother. She was standing in a garden wearing the yellow dress she'd worn in his earliest memories. She was smiling at him, her hand outstretched. "I'm proud of you, baby," she said. "So proud of the man you've become." "Mom, I miss you." "I know, but I never really left. I've been watching, and now Dorothy needs you to come back. Wake up, Marcus. Wake up." Marcus opened his eyes. White ceiling, beeping machines, a dull ache in his side. He was alive. A nurse appeared beside his bed. "Mr. Sterling, can you hear me?" "Dorothy," he croaked. "Is she okay?" The nurse smiled. "The surgery was successful. Both of you are doing well. You can see her in a few hours." Relief flooded through Marcus like a wave. He closed his eyes and let the tears fall. 3 days later, they were in the same room, side by side in hospital beds connected by more than just blood now. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked. "Sore, tired, grateful." Dorothy turned her head to look at him. "How about you? Like someone cut out one of my organs, but happy. Happy, happier than I've been in years, maybe ever." Dorothy's eyes softened. "Your mother would be proud. I wish she could see you now." "I dreamed about her during the surgery. She said she was proud of me." "She was always proud of you, Marcus, even when you couldn't see it, even when you were lost." They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the machines that monitored their healing. "What happens now?" Dorothy asked. "Now we get better. Then we get back to work. There's a lot to do." The Riverside Project. First thing on the agenda. I've already spoken to the families. They're cautiously optimistic. Mrs. Patterson in 4B cried when I told her she could stay. And Jerome, he's on the housing committee, helping us design the community spaces. He's actually good at it, has a real eye for what people need. Dorothy smiled. I always knew he was more than just a bitter old man. He's grateful, they all are. But mostly they're excited. For the first time in years, they have hope. Hope. Dorothy said the word like a prayer. That's what I always wanted to give them. Hope. You did. And now we're going to give them something more, a home, a real home that no one can take away. 2 months later, Dorothy was released from the hospital. The kidney was working. Her blood pressure was stable. Her diabetes was under control with proper medication. Marcus drove her home to Mattapan. But when they arrived, something was different. Cars lined the street. People filled the yard. A banner hung across the porch. Welcome home, Miss Dot. Dorothy's hand flew to her mouth. What is this? Your family, Marcus said. All of them. They got out of the car. The crowd surged forward. Hugs and tears and laughter everywhere. Jerome was there walking without his cane now. He'd been staying in one of the apartments Marcus had purchased and renovated for community members. His own place. First time in 3 years. Miss Dot, he said, hugging her carefully. You look beautiful. Jerome Carter, you're standing up straight. What happened? Got myself a physical therapist. Young kid, but he knows what he's doing. Says I'll be running marathons in no time. Don't push it. Darnell was there with a young woman on his arm. Miss Dot, this is Jennifer. We're getting married next month. Dorothy hugged them both. About time you found someone. She's beautiful. She's also a social worker at the VA, Darnell said proudly. She helps veterans like me. We make a good team. Maria Santos was there with her 3 kids. They were dressed in new clothes, clean and neat. The oldest was holding a drawing of Dorothy surrounded by hearts. We made this for you, Miss Dot. Dorothy knelt down, tears streaming. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Even Eleanor Mitchell was there, standing at the edge of the crowd, watching with a satisfied smile. You did all this? Dorothy asked Marcus. The community did. I just helped organize. They wanted to show you how much you mean to them. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just let them love you." They went inside. The house had been transformed. Fresh paint, new furniture, modern appliances, a medical monitoring system that would alert doctors if anything went wrong. "Marcus, this is too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough, but it's a start." Dorothy sat down in a new armchair, overwhelmed. The crowd filtered in after her, filling the small house with warmth and laughter. Marcus stood back and watched. This was what it meant to build something. Not towers, not empires, but community, connection, love. 6 months later, the Riverside project broke ground, but it wasn't the same project anymore. The new plans called for 200 units of mixed-income housing, 40% affordable, 40% workforce, 20% market rate. The 127 original families had been offered ownership stakes, community spaces on every floor, a rooftop garden run by residents, local hiring preferences for all construction jobs. Marcus stood at the groundbreaking ceremony, shovel in hand. Beside him stood Jerome Maria Darnell, Dr. Sarah Chen, and Dorothy Healthy and Strong, watching with pride. "This development is different from anything I've ever built," Marcus said into the microphone. "It's not about profit. It's not about my name. It's about people, specifically the 127 families who have called this neighborhood home for generations." He looked at Mrs. Patterson, 96 years old, now sitting in a wheelchair in the front row. She was smiling. "This is your home. It always has been, and now it will be forever. No one is going anywhere. We're building around you, not on top of you, and when it's done, you'll own a piece of it, all of you." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus handed his shovel to Jerome. "You should do the honors." Jerome looked at the shovel, then at Marcus, then at the ground beneath their feet. 42 years ago, I moved into this neighborhood. I thought I'd die here. Then I almost did, sleeping on park benches because some developer took my home." His voice cracked. "But now I'm about to break ground on a building where I'll live again, where my grandchildren will visit, where my great-grandchildren might grow up." He plunged the shovel into the dirt. "This is what community looks like. This is what change looks like. This is what hope looks like." The crowd roared. 1 year later, the building was complete. The grand opening was nothing like the corporate events Marcus used to attend. No champagne, no executives in expensive suits, just families moving into their new homes carrying boxes and memories building lives. Maria Santos stood on her new balcony, watching her 3 children play in the community courtyard below. She worked regular hours now at a good job just 15 minutes from home. Her oldest had gotten a full scholarship to Boston University, pre-med. "Miss Dot," she said when Dorothy came to visit, "I never thought I'd have a home again, a real home. Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank Marcus. He's the one who made it possible. I thank him every day, but you're the one who made him see. None of this happens without you." Jerome lived on the 4th floor, same as his old building. His apartment had the same view of the sunrise he'd loved for 42 years. He'd hung his daughter's graduation photo on the wall. His grandson visited every weekend now. "Mr. Sterling," he said one evening when Marcus came to check on the residents, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For judging you. That first night at the church I said terrible things. I thought you were just another rich man pretending to care. You were right to judge me. I was exactly what you thought I was. Maybe, but you became something else, something better." Jerome shook his head. "I've lived a long time. I've seen a lot of people claim to change. Most of them are lying, but you actually did it. That's rare." Marcus didn't know what to say. He'd spent so long building walls, accumulating wealth, measuring success in dollars and square footage, but Jerome's words meant more than any of it. "I had help," Marcus finally said. "A lot of help. We all need help. The difference is whether we accept it." The church in Roxbury had transformed too. Eleanor's Foundation had funded a massive renovation, new kitchen, expanded dining area, medical clinic on the 2nd floor, counseling services, job training programs, a childcare center. Dorothy ran it all, not as a volunteer anymore, but as executive director with a full salary and a staff of 20. She worked reasonable hours, now took care of her health, and had regular checkups that she actually attended. Darnell managed the Veterans Program. Jerome sat on the advisory board. Sarah Chen had left her city job to work full-time on community development partnerships. Every Thursday night, they still served soup. But now it was just one small part of something much bigger. Marcus came every Thursday still, not to write checks or pose for photos, to serve, to listen, to see. "You know," Dorothy said one evening as they cleaned up together, "when I first started doing this 17 years ago, I never imagined it would become all this." Neither did I. I was just a grieving mother, trying to make sense of losing my daughter, trying to find purpose in the pain. And now, Dorothy looked around the bustling community center, at the families eating dinner together, at the children playing in the supervised area, at the veterans getting counseling, at the job seekers polishing their resumes. Now I have more family than I ever dreamed possible. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. "You always did. You just didn't realize it." "And you? What about you, Marcus? What do you have now?" Marcus thought about that question. A year ago, he would have answered with numbers. Net worth, square footage, market capitalization. Now, "I have purpose," he said. "I have meaning. I have you, and I have this." He gestured at the room full of people. "I have community. For the first time in my life, I know what that word actually means." Dorothy squeezed his hand. "Your mother would be so proud." "I know. I feel it." The night was winding down. People were heading home to apartments they owned in buildings that would never displace them in a neighborhood that finally felt like it belonged to the people who lived there. Marcus walked Dorothy to her car, the same old car she'd been driving for years, even though she could afford a new one now. "You know," she said, "I used to wonder what Grace would think of all this, whether she'd be proud of what I built in her name. I'm sure she would be. I think so too. But more than that, I think she'd be proud of you for finally becoming the man she always believed you could be. She never met me. She didn't have to. I told her about you, all the time. Even when you were lost, I told her you'd find your way back." Marcus felt tears threatening. "I wish I'd known her." "You do know her. Every time you serve someone who's hungry, every time you fight for someone who can't fight for themselves, every time you choose compassion over profit. That's Grace. That's her legacy living on through you." Dorothy got in her car and rolled down the window. "Same time next week. Always. Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Dorothy." He watched her drive away. Then he stood in the parking lot, looking up at the stars. 18 months ago, he'd followed an old woman through the streets of Boston, convinced she was stealing from him. He'd been so certain of his own righteousness, so blind to his own cruelty. Now he understood that she'd been giving all along, giving everything she had, to people who had nothing, to a community that needed her, to a lost man who didn't deserve her love, but received it anyway. Marcus Sterling had spent 36 years building an empire. He'd measured his worth in buildings and bank accounts. He'd confused wealth with value and power with purpose. But Dorothy Mae Williams had shown him the truth. Real wealth wasn't what you accumulated, it was what you gave away. Real power wasn't what you controlled, it was what you set free. And real purpose wasn't found in boardrooms or bank statements. It was found in church basements and community centers and the grateful eyes of people who finally had hope. Marcus got in his car and drove through the city that bore his name on so many buildings. But he didn't see the buildings anymore. He saw the people inside them, the families, the children, the dreamers and fighters and survivors. He saw community. He saw love. And he understood finally what his life was for. Not to build monuments to his own ambition, but to build homes for people who needed them. Not to accumulate wealth, but to share it. Not to be remembered, but to help others who would never know his name. Dorothy had taught him that, through her sacrifice, through her love, through her unwavering belief that even the most lost person could find their way back. And now Marcus Sterling was going to spend the rest of his life proving her right. Not because he wanted redemption, not because he felt guilty, but because he'd finally learned what it meant to see people, really see them. And once your eyes were open, you could never close them again. That was grace. That was purpose. That was enough.